Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those of us that are already on call, Prof was here before. He's going to join us, inshallah, few minutes after we have more of our girls and attendees. So today, inshallah, is going to be our 14th session on Islamic finance enlightenment series. And inshallah, we will be discussing fatwa regulations and fatwa processes, and how Islamic finance institutions make steps of giving fatwa and sourcing fatwa. So the main topic is Sharia review process and fatwa obligation, the tools, the ethics, and stipulations of fatwa processes in Islamic financial institutions. Professor Ahmed Ballu Dogorawa is a well-read Sharia scholar in Nigeria. He's from the north, one of the few scholars of Islamic finance contributed to the development of Islamic finance operations in Nigeria. So he's here and is only going to start making his presentation when it is 5 o'clock. And we hope that, inshallah, other audience will join us as the program continues. We are actually going to make a kind of a plea to all of us that are in attendance and those that will join us. Please, we would appreciate if you can make yourself mute. Now it's going to be a time that we would allow participants to make comments and contributions or even questions. But as long as the only lecturer is making his own presentation, we would want us all to please mute ourselves so that whatever recording we are making, because this is being live directly on our YouTube page, so that those who could not be able to join the call would be able to listen and watch the program after it is concluded. So it is now expected that we please we mute ourselves while we listen to the presentation. So inshallah, we would be expecting Prof to get in few minutes, and inshallah, we believe we are going to benefit more from his presentation. Questions, reactions, contributions, clarifications, inshallah, would be allowed for 30 minutes after the Prof has presented his presentation. Jazakumullah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm with you.
Okay, Jazakumullah khairan, sir. Welcome, sir. Alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu wa sallam. Can you please help us to bring your video, sir? Because we are actually live, live on YouTube, and it is being recorded live, so that when we are done with this program, we can actually share with those that were unable to join us live. Today, inshallah, we are having the 14th.
I just have the network. or internet connection will enable me to do that throughout, because we are having some epileptic network connection here.
It does not allow you to use the only voice, but at least for now we can actually see and then give more of solace saying the one that is speaking to us. Today, inshallah, we are having our 14th session on Islamic financial enlightenment series where we discuss Islamic financial principles as relates to their operations in the modern Islamic financial institutions. We have been hearing and we will be hearing every time Sharia compliance, Sharia review, Sharia opinion, Sharia auditing, and these Sharia related terms, which means that Sharia auditing and review are critical processes in Islamic financial institutions. And that means that they are going to have this because they want to ensure that the operations of Islamic financial institutions comply with the principles of Islamic. So these audits and reviews are actually carried out by Sharia scholars, finance experts. We now see that the modern operation of Islamic finance rely mainly on fatwa, on advisories, on opinions of scholars. And in fact, in the IOFI standards, it finds it very necessary to have a particular standard that discusses fatwa regulations and ethics, which means as a Sharia advisor, Sharia compliant officer, or someone who aims to be that, or someone that is even working on this post, we need to know that what are the Sharia requirements, Sharia obligations, Sharia ethics of those who sit on this seat of fatwa, especially in Islamic financial institutions. And that is why we are welcoming today one of our scholars in Islamic finance, one of those who joined others in forming and developing the IFIs as regards in Nigeria. Please, if you are just joining us, make sure you mute yourself. Please, if you are just joining us, make sure you mute yourself. So today we are welcoming and having as our guest Professor Ahmad Bello Dogorawa. He is from the Department of Accounting in Ahmadu Bello University. Professor Dogorawa is someone that is very known for those who follow the trends and developments of Islamic financial institutions in Nigeria. He is a well-published international scholar on finance, corporate governance and regulatory, Islamic finance, concept and operations, among other related areas. He has over 2 decades experience in designing and delivering training programs, especially as related to your IFIs. He's a consultant and a member advisory board of experts to many local Islamic IFIs, especially currently is a member of JAI's advisory board of experts. He's one of the members of JAI's. Professor is an alumnus of Al-Azhar University. He was there to obtain firstly his certificate in Usuluddin wa Islamiyat before now crossing to finance, after which through which he become a professor of accounting in Ahmadu Bello University. So I actually have to make that last comment about him, so that when you see him that he's a professor of accounting, you wouldn't be saying that this is not an affair. He's a scholar per se. He has actually been into Azhar, where he has studied basics in Islamic studies and finance, after which he crossed to accounting, and through which he became professor of Islamic of accounting in Ahmadu Bello University. Inshallah, we'll be expecting and be listening to Prof while he takes us through this interesting and important topic. Is that Prof, and you are very, very welcome to this gathering.
Jazakumullah khairan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man walahu wa ba'd. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The title of my presentation is Sharia Review Process and Fatwa obligation, tools, ethics, and stipulations of Fatwa processes in Islamic financial institutions. And I'm making this presentation today, being Sunday, 11th of August, 2024. I'm supposed to share with you the slides I prepared for presentation, but unfortunately, I was not able to edit the drafts I already prepared, and I felt it's not proper to share with you unedited slides, but inshallah, I will do so inshallah within the next few hours or maybe few days after today's presentation, inshallah. But for the purpose of the presentation, the outline consists of 6 items. First is introduction. The second component is Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions. The third segment of the presentation focuses on Sharia supervision framework in Islamic financial institutions. The fourth component is on Sharia review in Islamic financial institutions. The fifth segment of the paper focuses on Fatwa and its tools, ethics, and stipulations for Islamic financial institutions in Nigeria. And the last segment, which of course is not the least, will talk about process of issuing fatwa on any contemporary issue that comes the way of an Islamic financial institution. By way of introduction, I started by saying that the success of Islamic financial institutions depends largely on the confidence and trust stakeholders have in them with regard to the compliance of their products, their pricing, and processes with Sharia. To ensure compliance with Sharia, a robust supervision system needs to be put in place for the purpose of strengthening the credibility and continued corporate existence of Islamic financial institutions. Because without a robust supervision system that would help in strengthening the credibility and continued corporate existence of Islamic financial institutions, stakeholders would not have confidence in them. And if there is no confidence or they don't have confidence in them, they will not patronize them, they will not believe in what they do, they will not accept them, they will not advocate for them, and in fact, they will distance themselves from them. So if there is no patronage, no Islamic financial institution will survive. After a while, it will die naturally. So a system that will ensure Sharia compliance is important. And this system is often called supervision system or Sharia supervision system. So what is this Sharia supervision? There are many definitions of Sharia supervision, but I try to put together a number of definitions in one place in order to give us something that is closer to what we may call at least a comprehensive, not necessarily comprehensive, but something that we can understand easily. And I said, based on my review of several and various sources, Sharia supervision, also called Sharia governance, because some authors call it Sharia governance, is the internal and external mechanism which helps to ensure that an Islamic financial institution complies with the rules and principles of Sharia in its products, instruments, operations, practices, management, and other aspects of what it does. So we can see from this definition that supervision, or rather Sharia supervision, has to do with some kind of institutional arrangements within an Islamic financial institution that use a mechanism, both internal and external, to ensure that Islamic financial institutions comply with Sharia rules and principles regarding their products, their instruments, their operations, their practices, in fact, their managements and policies. Because if they don't comply to the rules and principles of Sharia in these areas, then those financial institutions are not truly Sharia compliant in the full sense of it. Of course, not complying with all of this 100% does not mean they are not Sharia compliant, but they are not fully Sharia compliant. Resolution number 177, clause 3, subclause 19 of OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy define Sharia supervision as the process of issuing Sharia opinions or fatwa and rulings pertaining to the activity of the institution, monitoring their implementation and ensuring their proper application. So if we look at this definition by OIC, International Islamic Fiqh Academy, otherwise known as Majma'ul Fiqh al-Islami ad-Dawli, we would observe that the definition actually focuses on the process of issuing fatwa and rulings to the activity of the institution, meaning not only on its products, but general operations, including policy issues, management issues, whether human resource policies or any other thing, provided it is part and parcel of the activities that the financial institution is into, then Sharia supervision is also having a role to play there. And that is why the definition added that in addition to the issuance of fatwa, there is also monitoring of their implementation, all the fatwa, all the opinions, and ensuring their proper application. Because one of the requirements, regulatory requirement for Islamic financial institutions is that for anything they want to do, unless if there is already a template already approved by their Sharia board, they cannot just go ahead and do it, including advertising and promotional materials. It must be subjected, or these materials must be subjected to a thorough review by the Sharia board, but even before the external Sharia board, starting from the internal or with the internal Sharia audits and Sharia compliance units, then it will be scaled up to the external Sharia review unit, which is called the Sharia Advisory Board or Sharia Supervisory Committees, as the case may be. There are a number of bases in the Quran and Sunnah for Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions. When we look at the basis or the various provisions of the Quran and Sunnah regarding Sharia supervision that relate to Islamic financial institutions, we could easily deduce or outline 5 areas that constitute the basis of Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions. Number 1 is accountability. 2 is transparency. 3 is responsiveness. 4 is justice and fairness. And 5, mutual consultation. The whole idea behind Sharia supervision is to give legitimacy to the activities of an Islamic financial institution by ensuring that it complies with the rules and principles of Sharia in all its activities. And that is why accountability, transparency, responsiveness, justice and fairness, mutual consultation are key and are the elements that provide the basis for Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions. We are very much aware that accountability involves ensuring that an Islamic financial institution's products and processes are in compliance with Sharia, thereby making that institution accountable and responsible to all stakeholders, investors, shareholders, depositors, employees, the public, government and its agencies, and all other stakeholders that have a role or that have a stake in the activities of the institution. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran in chapter 2, verse 284, that's Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whether you disclose what is in your own selves or conceal it, Allah will call you to account for it. ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله. So that is the essence of accountability. And we know also that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to render back our trust to those to whom they are due. إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها. In Quran chapter 4 verse 58. Also in the hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyatihi." Each one of you is a guardian, and each guardian is accountable to everything under his care. So, the board of directors, the management, the Sharia advisory board, the internal Sharia units, the internal Sharia compliance units, all the other stakeholders are accountable for what they do. And that is why it is important that Sharia supervision is fully entrenched, is fully instituted in Islamic financial institutions. And we also know that the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall ask everyone about his stewardship. Inna Allah sa'ilun kulla abdin am mastar'ahu, ahafidha am dayya. Allah shall ask everyone about his stewardship, whether honored or betrayed, as transmitted by the Imam Muslim. Transparency is important and it is key to Sharia supervision because it involves the disclosure of information in an accurate and accessible manner to keep stakeholders better informed about the Islamic financial institutions and prevent them from taking excessive risk. In fact, transparency is the primary element in ensuring consumer protection and financial literacy. No customer of an Islamic financial institution should be just asked to sign a document or to go into a transaction or to go into any contract without fully understanding the nitty-gritty of that contract, what it means for him, the advantages, and any risk associated with it, if any. This has to be explained. Otherwise, there is lack of transparency. And we know that it is not permissible in Islam for the transacting party to conceal important information. Any information that is considered material must be disclosed by the financial institution to any existing or prospective customer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha tadayantum bidainin ila ajalin musamman faktubuhu. So there is the importance of, putting down. Why? Because if you put it down, nobody will be in doubt. Nobody would have any quarrel. There will be no misunderstanding. There will be no disagreement because it is there. Ma kutiba karra. Whatever is documented will be there permanently, unless if for whatever reason it is tampered with. But if it's not tampered with, it will remain there permanently. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the believers by way of recommendation that when they go into any kind of debt relationship, debt transaction, they should put it right in. They should reduce it right in. And that's فَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ بِالْعَدْلِ. Let a scribe write down faithfully as between the parties. So by writing faithfully, it means you are not concealing any material information. You are not actually trying to defraud or to take advantage of the person, maybe due to his the fact that he is less informed about financial transactions or about the modus operandi of financial institutions and the rest of it. Regarding responsiveness, it implies that Sharia advisory councils or Sharia supervisory boards, managements, and board of directors of Islamic financial institutions work diligently and sincerely for the betterment of all stakeholders. It is not the responsibility, or rather, it is not, expected of, for example, Sharia advisory board or Sharia supervisory board or Sharia advisory committee to just focus on the client or on the customer at the expense of the depositor, of the investor or stakeholder or shareholders. Because sometimes we have this kind of misconception, and including some of our brothers who are advocating for Islamic finance, they tend to think that everything about Islamic finance is the customer or is the public. But what about the depositor? What about the investor? What about the other shareholders? Are they also not stakeholders whose interests must be, taken care of or catered for? So it is the responsibility of all the management, the members of management, members of board, members of Sharia advisory committees, internal Sharia audits, Sharia compliance units, to ensure that they work diligently and sincerely for the betterment of all stakeholders. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, any servant who Allah has given the authority of ruling some people, and he does not look after them in an honest manner, will never feel even the fragrance of paradise. لم يجد رائحة الجنة. لا يجد رائحة الجنة. He will not even smell the fragrance of paradise. This is the hadith that Al-Imam al-Bukhari transmitted. Another narration by Al-Imam Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, a ruler who, having control over the affairs of the Muslims, does not strive diligently for their betterment and does not serve them sincerely, will not enter paradise with them. لا يدخل الجنة معهم إلا لا يدخل الجنة معهم, except that he will not enter paradise with them. So it means responsiveness is key in Sharia supervision. The fourth point, of course, is justice and fairness, which means closing the door from cutthroat competition, shortchanging or overcharging the customer or the institution, because as much as we want to protect the customer, we are also required to protect the institution. Forcible transactions, making profit through exploitation, profiteering, blackmail, fraud, bribery, monopoly, and the rest of it. These are all not acceptable. They are not permissible. And that is why there is a need for a robust system of Sharia supervision in order to prevent some of these things happening in Islamic financial institutions. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has warned, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ, and do not consume one another's wealth unjustly, as in Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 188. The last aspect is mutual consultation. What this means is that all stakeholders in an Islamic financial institution are to put hands together, to come together to ensure that, especially those who are in a position of authority to decide for the organization or for the institution, that they should use the means of consultation that are not contrary to the principles of the Sharia in decision-making process for the purpose of achieving business and social objectives of the institution. So it is not expected that it's not expected of an Islamic financial institution to only focus on business objectives at the expense of social objectives, whereby they will be taking some decisions that will be harmful to the public or will be harmful to the host community. It is not permissible, or to do something that would actually not be in the interest or best interest of the employees or of the investors or other stakeholders. Everyone should actually be carried along as much as possible. And the only way to do this is by using the means of consultation, shura, in arriving at decisions that will have implication or impact on stakeholders. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, one of the characteristics of the believers is that they consult themselves, they consult one another in their affairs. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَى بَيْنَهُمْ. And their affairs is decided based on consultation. And even the Prophet ﷺ himself was commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to consult his Sahaba, the companions, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and consult them in the affairs. Sharia supervision is very important because it builds, it optimizes and ascertains corporate value and sustainability. It facilitates effective implementation of the Islamic financial system. It assists in mitigating the consequences of Sharia non-compliance risk, which involves reputation, finance, and even sometimes, law or legal, because Sharia non-compliance risk as I was saying, one of the consequences of Sharia non-compliance risk is litigation. And the more litigation an Islamic financial institution is exposed to, the more its reputation is going to be damaged. But the ultimate objective of Sharia supervision, when there is compliance with Sharia principles, is that it will give legitimacy to products and services, contracts and modalities of an Islamic financial institution. Governance, control, and compliance are the main components of a Sharia supervision system, as explained by OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy Resolution 177, Clause 3, Sub-Clause 19. Governance, control, and compliance. Under governance, you have the Sharia board. Under control, you have the internal Sharia review units or external Sharia review, especially where the financial institution decide to seek the assistance or to outsource, the expertise of people outside the organization or the institution to render some Sharia review related services. Then the third component is compliance. And under compliance, we have the internal Sharia compliance unit. So these are the three components of Sharia supervision system. Now, the framework for this Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions is traceable to IOFI governance standards, particularly standard number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. These are the governance standards that provide the main framework for Sharia supervision. Of course, all the other standards have one connection or the other to the issue of Sharia supervision. In addition to AOFI governance standards, there is also IFSB, International Islamic Financial Services Board of Malaysia. This Islamic Financial Services Board, its standard number 10 is a very, very robust standard on Sharia supervision. The standard was revised as standard number 16. So put together, this IFSB, that is Islamic Financial Service Board, standard 10 and 16, also provide a basis for the framework for Sharia supervision in Islamic financial institutions. The standards and guidelines require Islamic financial institutions to put in place a sound and robust internal Sharia control system and internal Sharia audit, or one of the two. So it is either internal Sharia, internal control system, or internal Sharia audit, whichever nomenclature a financial institution wants to use, it is okay. Two, external Sharia committee, which in our own case here is Sharia advisory committees or Sharia advisory board or Sharia supervisory board, or as in Nigeria, advisory committee of experts. And the third aspect is governance and compliance committee or governance and compliance units. So 3 units are required to be put in place by these standards. AOFI governance standards 1 to 13 as it is, even though 1 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 are more germane to the issue of Sharia supervision. And then IFSB standard 10 and standard 16. They all require Islamic financial institutions to put in place a sound and robust, a mechanism that consists of internal Sharia control system or internal Sharia audit, external Sharia committee, and governance and compliance committee. The need for and purpose of internal Sharia review or Sharia audit as an integral part of Sharia governance are provided in IOFI's governance standard 3, clause 3, and standard 3, clause 5, as well as sections 3, subsection B, and section 3C of IFSB 10. I'll be making reference to these standards, IOFI, IFSB, and the resolutions of International Islamic Fiqh Academy of the OIC. The guiding principles, structure, and procedure for internal Sharia review are covered by IOFI Governance Standard number 3, clauses 9 to 25, and IFSB Standard 10, clause 10, sub clause D. When I share the slides, you would see all these references, the references I'm making to the standards, so that at least we can also go back to the standards and read them for better understanding. AOFI Governance Standard 1, clause 3, and Principle 1, clause 1, sub 10 of IFSB Standard 10 further require that an external Sharia compliance process be put in place. So we can see internal Sharia audit or internal Sharia unit is required, and now external Sharia compliance process is also required. And according to these standards, all the provisions of the standards I mentioned, putting in place this external compliance process should be based on the guiding principles, structure, and procedure covered by AOFI Governance Standard 2, clause 7 to 15, clauses 7 to 15, and IFSB 10, clause 3 or section 3, subsection D, to assist in ensuring that the activities and operations of Islamic financial institutions are in compliance with the Sharia. The external Sharia compliance process consists of Sharia Advisory Committee or Council, or Sharia Advisory Board, or Sharia Supervisory Board, or other nomenclature, because there are more than 15 nomenclature currently being used in different clients to depict and describe their Sharia committees. So in addition to external Sharia compliance process, there should be external audit firms. An audit firm that would be able to audit the financial activities of the Islamic financial institutions based on the provisions of AOFI accounting and auditing standards, as well as some provisions of IFSB regarding risk, and then, of course, the umbrella accounting instruments or financial accounting instruments, that is IFRS. All this have to be put together. And so there is a need to identify an excellent audit firm that has the capacity and the wherewithal, the knowledge of auditing the financial activities of an Islamic financial institution based on the provisions of this. And possibly advisory firms from outside, depending on the size, the activities of the institution. They may also outsource certain, services from experts in the system, but who are not part of the organization. In Nigeria, the guidelines for non-interest financial institutions, guidelines on the governance of advisory committee of experts for non-interest financial institutions, and BOFIA, Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act of 2020, provide the basis for Sharia supervision and review, in addition to IOFI and IFSB relevant standards. So which means in addition to IOFI and IFSB relevant standards that I mentioned, in Nigeria, we have domesticated our own legal instruments that provide the basis for Sharia supervision. The main instrument now is BOFIA, because all the guidelines are guidelines, they are not legal instruments, even though sometimes, according to lawyers, they are actually used together with pieces of legislation to either interpret for interpretation or for making a case. But in actual sense, they do not represent laws. All those guidelines from 2011 that CBN has released up to 2019, we're only using guidelines, circulars, and other instruments or other papers and documents that CBN has the power actually to release and to guide the operations of Islamic financial institutions in Nigeria. But it was only in 2020 when we had a review of BOFIA, Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, that Islamic finance is fully recognized now in Nigeria, because so many aspects of Islamic finance were actually mentioned or are contained in the 2020 BOFIA, including phrase, issues relating to certain instruments of financing, including sukuk and the rest of it. So much so that we now feel we are well covered. And in terms of legislation, if we compare Nigeria with all other countries that operate dual system of finance, we would actually beat our chest and proudly say we have one of the most robust legal framework for Islamic finance to thrive in Nigeria. And glory be to Allah, alhamdulillah. AWOFI governance standards, IFSB standards 10 and 16, and OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy Resolution 177, Clause 3, Subclause 19, have outlined the Sharia review standard process and the respective roles of Sharia advisory boards, internal Sharia audit, and compliance units for Islamic financial institutions. And because I have only 1 hour to make my presentation, I will not be able to take us through the nitty-gritty of what's, the roles, the functions, appointments, composition, and the rest of it provided for in this, guidelines and standards. But since I've given reference to them, I hope afterwards we would find time to go through the standards for IFSB standard 10 and 16. They are for free download. And then Sharia standards for IOFI is also available free. But governance standards, I'm not sure if we can get all of it, but we can get them in pieces. Standard 1, different from standard 2, all in PDF. But for the Sharia standards I think for now, up to about 58 of them, we have them as a collection, and one can download them free, from the internet, either from their website or just Google, and you are good to go. And then for our own guidelines, it's also available on the Central Bank of Nigeria's website. But I want to say that the processes, or rather the requirements or provisions of the standards involves, or includes issues relating to appointments, composition, qualification, Sharia coordination, Sharia compliance process, and Sharia resolutions. These are the main outline of the processes and the provisions of the standards. Now, review of policies and guidelines, product and services, marketing and promotional materials, provision of checks and balances to ensure Sharia compliance, and issuance of fatwa are among the main responsibilities of the Sharia Advisory Board. Specifically, according to the governance standards of IOFI and IFSB 10 and 16, and our own governance guidelines on governance for NIFIS in Nigeria, one can see, or rather, one will be able to see about 5 main functions of Sharia advisory boards, or in Nigeria, advisory committee of experts. Number 1, advising the board of directors and management on Sharia-related matters to ensure compliance with Sharia principles at all times. Number 2, reviewing, endorsing Sharia-related policies and guidelines. So we can see from here that Sharia supervision is not just about issuance of fatwa, but also reviewing and endorsing Sharia-related policies and guidelines, including policy on human management, or rather human policy, the aspects of employee-employer relationship and the rest of it. All of these guidelines have to be subjected to a thorough review by the Sharia Advisory Committee of Experts, or rather Advisory Committee of Experts, as it is called in Nigeria. Number 3 is endorsing and validating documentation for new products and services. It is not allowed for any Islamic financial institution in Nigeria or in any other client to just introduce a product, new product or service, without actually the approval and the certification, without approval and certification given by its own Sharia advisory board. However, if a product is just coming up as a kind of an enhancement of an already existing product that has been approved, and that the enhancement or improvement or modification made to the product is not material to the extent that it will actually be seen as a new product, then it does not have to go through the process of thorough review by Sharia Advisory Committee or Advisory Committee of Experts. In that regard, information through the internal Sharia units or audit of the institution, plus the compliance, Sharia compliance units, when they look at it and vet it, it will be okay, and the management is good to go. However, such kind of products need to be reported to the S in Nigeria, or SAB, or SAC, or SSB, whichever name you call it. But whenever I mention any of this nomenclature, I mean Sharia bodies. That's all what I mean. So they should be informed for ratification, or at least for information's sake. But if it involves material changing, if there is structural change in the nomenclature or in the dynamics or in the way and manner the product is structured from what it used to be, then it has to undergo another review by the Sharia board. Number 4, assisting and advising relevant parties that serve the Islamic financial institution. All the relevant bodies, including tax authorities, if they need assistance, they need advice, they could be advised. Customers, they could be advised. They can also lay their complaints to the Sharia board, especially if it involves maybe complaints about being defraud or maybe not understanding how a figure is arrived, or that they feel they have been shortchanged or overcharged and the rest of it. They could also lay their complaint. They can seek guidance. They can seek assistance from the Sharia board. In the same vein, employees can also come to the Sharia board. That is part of what they do, and that is part of their own mandates and obligation. Number 5, documenting any opinion, and in this case we mean fatwa, any opinion it gives on Sharia-related issues, and providing support to the Islamic financial institution in respect of questions or queries that may be raised regarding Sharia compliance of this product. Sometimes you will be at home and someone will just call you and say, Dogarawa, I learned that you are a member of the advisory committee of expert of Jaiz Bank. But I've just been to, I went to XYZ branch, but what they told me, I couldn't understand. I did not understand. What's the difference between what they say and what conventional banks are doing? Now, this, the bank may not even know, the management may not know, the board may not know, but here you are trying to defend if you know what actually the person is talking about and what to tell him. If you don't know, or you need to find out, you tell him that, okay, you will find out. Or if it's something that is really serious, you can advise him to meet the management or write to the management or go and see the manager. If it is beyond them, you can ask him to write formally to the Sharia Advisory Board and you table it and discuss it. So all these are part of what the Sharia Advisory Board. And because of this, it will be unfair to anybody. It will be unfair for anybody to just conclude that Islamic financial institutions are not Sharia compliant just because of one or two mistakes that one or two people do, or maybe a branch who is really being manned, a branch that is being manned by less informed staff about Sharia rules and regulations, and then the person concludes that they are not doing anything. The kind of effort Sharia Advisory Board members of all Islamic financial institutions across the globe are making is so enormous, so tiring, so overwhelming that certainly it will be unfair to just accuse banks or to accuse Islamic financial institutions without really understanding or finding out from those who know about the modus operandi of Islamic financial institutions. Another point is sometimes people complain, and their complaint is as a result of maybe asking or hearing or listening to maybe a clip or watching a video, clip that a scholar either on the member on Friday or during his ta'alim session mentioned something negative about Islamic banks, and they think it is final. Sometimes the scholar might make that statement not because he knows the truth about it. He may not know. Because if, for example, you take murabaha, as we always say, you take murabaha, the murabaha that people know, especially our scholars who have actually taught us, in the traditional system of learning, which, alhamdulillah, I am a product of that system, alhamdulillah. Now, you find that if you read in the books of fiqh of Maliki school, maybe starting from, say, the book of Al-Iziyah, because that's Muqaddimatul Iziyah, that's from where you see Babul Bay, Babul Fil Bay, or Fil Buyu'i, from there up to Mukhtasar. When you read, you see that the kind of murabaha that has been discussed is not the kind of murabaha that Islamic banks do. Why? Because the assumption of the authors of those books, may Allah have mercy upon them and may He reward them bountifully, was that people will continue to do businesses, in form of trading. So you go to a shop in the market and you meet someone and you tell him how much, what is the cost of this commodity to you, and I will give you a margin. You tell me your margin, or we agree on a margin. That's what they assume. But is that what Islamic financial institutions do? No. In their own case, they are a financial intermediary. What they do is wasata maliya, financial intermediation. They are not actually traders who open shop in the market and sell items, vehicles, automobiles, home utensils, and the rest of it. That's not what they do. You come for financing. So what they do is financing. And that is why what they do is murabaha lil amiri bishra, murabaha to the purchase order, which really there are certain things that are not the same or that are an improvement or an addition to the requirements of the ordinary murabaha we know. The same thing with many other products like ijara. We now have ijara muntahiya bit tamliq. We have ijara mawsufa fi dhimma, even though this ijara mawsufa fi dhimma has been covered by many fiqh books, but we also have ijara service, that is ijaratul khadamat or ijaratul manafi, which even though it has been discussed in the books of fiqh, but many people don't seem to understand or relate it to understand the nexus between what was discussed in the books of fiqh and what is being practiced by Islamic financial institutions. If you take also, like even though salam, well, it is still the same salam we know, and to some extent istisna, even though it was not popular in the past, but now it is becoming very, very popular. So these are some of the things that I think we need to understand regarding the role of Sharia Advisory Board in what they do. Alhamdulillah. Fatwa on operational financial rulings and other related issues and concerns is one of the tasks assigned to Sharia supervisory boards of the Islamic financial institutions. Because if you read the sections, relevant sections of the IOFI governance standards I mentioned, as well as the IOFI Sharia standard number 29, you would see that fatwa is one of the tasks assigned to Sharia supervisory boards of Islamic financial institutions. IOFI Sharia standard number 29 and OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy resolution number 153 cover the relevant issues regarding stipulations and ethics of fatwa in Islamic financial institutions. The IOFI Standard 29 covers, among other things, definition of fatwa, its Sharia ruling and scope, conditions of fatwa issuer, duties of the Islamic financial institution as fatwa seeker, methods and means of fatwa, fatwa controls, retreat from a mistaken fatwa, and ethics of fatwa issuers. According to the IOFI Standard 29, clause or section 2, subsection 1, the term fatwa refers to a Sharia opinion presented to a person who seeks it with regard to an incident that has already occurred, that is the fatwa incident, or is expected to occur, which means fatwa is given in for two reasons.
Alaikum, sir.
Naam, alaikum assalam, doctor. Naam, I can hear you.
It seems that you're actually missing some of your voice. Maybe you can just switch off the video, like you can get the part of the fatwa. You can just start from the fatwa area.
Okay.
But probably it's your network. We are getting him very clearly here.
Aha.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah. Because I can see your voice is fainting actually. Yeah, okay. Okay, mashallah. So as I was saying, fatwa on operational financial rulings and other related issues and concerns is one of the tasks assigned to Sharia supervisory boards of Islamic financial institutions. And I also said that AWOFI's Sharia standard number 29 and OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy resolution number 153 cover the relevant issues regarding stipulations and ethics of fatwa in Islamic financial institutions. And specifically, the IOFI standard or Sharia standard 29 covers, among other things, definition of fatwa, its Sharia ruling and scope, conditions of fatwa issuer, duties of the Islamic financial institution as fatwa seeker, methods and means of fatwa, fatwa controls, retreat from a mistaken fatwa, and ethics of fatwa issuers.
Prof, sir, you can switch on your video.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Now, I also mentioned that according to Awafi Sharia Standard 29, Section 2, Subsection 1, the term fatwa was defined as a Sharia opinion presented to a person who seeks it with regard to an incident that has already occurred or is expected to occur. So fatwa is not given on conjecture, on assumptions. No. If that ara'aita, what do you think if, what do you think if that what if is something that is truly expected to occur, then fatwa can be issued. Otherwise, if it is just to test the intellectual capacity of the fatwa issuer, then there is no place for it as far as al-ifta is concerned. OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy has defined fatwa as providing formal Sharia opinion on a specific issue, either on request or for the mere sake of enlightening people on the Sharia ruling regarding an arising subject. And I brought this second definition from Awafi, from Majma al-Fiqh al-Islami, because of its relevance to not only Islamic financial institutions, but generally du'at, because it is not a requirement that fatwa must only be given on request. Even without request, you can give fatwa just for the sake of enlightening people on the Sharia ruling regarding an arising subject, even without request. And that is why this second definition is more comprehensive, at least in my own opinion. Fatwa is a great responsibility because it involves interpretation of the directives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you are issuing fatwa, you are interpreting the directives of Allah. And you, the mufti, the fatwa issuer, is elucidating on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why we say you are endorsing on behalf of Allah. You are like doing tawqi, signature. You are like appending your signature on behalf of Allah, that what you are saying is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended. No wonder Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah authored his book, that very popular book, Ilamul Muwaqqi'ina ar-Rabbil Alameen. You are actually endorsing, you are elucidating on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you give fatwa. Not only to Islamic financial institutions, but generally as a da'iyah, as a scholar, wherever you are, whatever you do, if you issue fatwa, remember, you are like endorsing, you are interpreting the directive of Allah, and you are elucidating it on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as well as following the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in clarifying the rulings of Sharia. Because Allah says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya ayyuhar rasulu, balligh, not that one, not balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbika, but wa nazzalna ilayka al-kitaba litubayyina lin-nasi wa anzalna ilayka al-kitaba litubayyina lin-nasi ma nuzzila ilayhi. It means the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was responsible, was commanded, was directed by Allah to clarify the rulings of Sharia to the people. Now that you are also giving fatwa, you are issuing fatwa, you are clarifying, or you are exemplifying and emulating the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in clarifying the rulings of Sharia. So it's a very big task, my dear brother, my dear sister. In terms of cycle, we can say the fatwa cycle, involves or consists of 4 elements. Number 1, the fatwa seeker, in this case, Islamic financial institution. 2, issue requiring fatwa. That is the issue requiring fatwa, the issue at hand which requires a fatwa. Then the third element is the mufti, that's the fatwa issuer. In this case, Advisory Committee of Experts in Nigeria, or Sharia Advisory Committee, Sharia Advisory Council, Sharia Supervisory Board, as is being called elsewhere. And then the fourth element is the fatwa itself, the opinion, which would actually be formed by the mufti, the fatwa issuer, based on certain principles through the use of certain tools based on certain ethics and stipulations. Now, looking at IOFI Standard 29, Section 5 and 6, and OIC International Islamic Fiqh Academy Resolution 153, Clause 2, Subclause 17, we can see that for the fatwa seeker, there are certain, requirements for him. One, that the fatwa seeker, in this case, Islamic financial institution, is to seek fatwa on only actual or expected occurrences, no conjecture, no assumption, not what if, that is far-fetched, something that is not likely to occur. That is not permissible. And we know even from the statements of some of the Salaf, especially Abdullahi ibn Abbas and Abdullahi ibn Mas'ud, this is not part of the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, to ask questions for what is far-fetched, something that is unlikely to happen, but something that is expected to occur, or something that has actually occurred, then they can ask questions. The second requirement is that if they seek fatwa from their Sharia board and a fatwa is given, they are not allowed to follow the fatwa of other Sharia board except with permission from its own board, and that they are required to follow that opinion unless if that opinion involves something that is permissible, but in the understanding of the management from the practical point of view, it is not going to be of interest, or rather it's not going to yield any serious or real benefits to the institution. In that case, they are permitted not to use it. But if it involves prohibition, they cannot go out of it. Whether they like the fatwa or they don't, they have to. But if something happened, or that there is a kind of missing gap or additional information that is required, or that the management or board feels that it is important to put those additional information before the Sharia board so that they can reconsider their stance, if those points are actually considered valid, then it is also permissible. Otherwise, once an Islamic financial institution seeks fatwa from its Sharia board, it has no reason whatsoever to refuse or to decide not to apply or use that fatwa. However, if they spot something like maybe an error based on either their experience, practical experience or operational experience, they can actually bring that to the notice of the Sharia board, and there is nothing wrong for the Sharia board to retreat from a mistaken fatwa and issue another one. The third requirement for Islamic financial institutions regarding fatwa is that they should not actually demand fatwa according to any specific madhab. For example, in Nigeria, our Islamic financial institutions should not ask their Sharia board to give them fatwa based on Maliki school of thought. No, they should just ask for fatwa. And even the members of Sharia advisory board are not also allowed to give fatwa based on the madhab they follow. Rather, they should just look at what is clear from the Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas, and other auxiliary tools with which a mufti will arrive at a ruling, as we shall see in the next few slides. I can see it's already 6 o'clock, but I will speed up to conclude my presentation, inshallah. So it is not permissible to say, give us fatwa based on Maliki school of thought, except where the legal or judiciary system in the country observes a specific school. We have some countries, especially in the Middle East, where their fatwa have to be in line with a particular madhab. And even in some countries, even some Asian countries, it is the same. And in fact, even in Africa, there are, especially, I think, Central Africa. Is it Central Africa or not Africa? We have some countries, these Arab countries, that use a particular madhab. In that case, if the legal system or judicial system stipulates, or restricts fatwa to a particular madhab that they follow, then especially if not following that madhab will lead to future litigations in courts, then in that case, the Sharia Advisory Board can restrict itself or limit itself to that madhab. But any reason other than this is not a reason. Fatawa should not be given based on the madhab or the preferred madhab of management or board or Sharia board itself or any other person. It should just be left open based on the requirements for issuing fatwa, which scholars have discussed extensively, and the guidelines or the standard, that is IOFI standard number, Sharia standard number 29, has adequately covered those aspects. On the part of the fatwa issuer, that is the Sharia board, there are a number of conditions and requirements that they are expected to observe. One, that those who would issue the fatwa must be knowledgeable must have knowledge of the Quran, the Sunnah, and related subjects. Two, knowledge about the areas of unanimous agreements and areas of disputes, as well as the various schools and opinions of fuqaha. Because if there is agreement on a particular issue, that is ijma, then they have no basis to go outside ijma. But if there is no ijma and that they cannot use qiyas, then they can use their own, juristic, capacity, or the extent to which they can infer, rulings from other sources, including auxiliary sources, to arrive at a fatwa. Number three, vast knowledge about the fundamentals of fiqh. It is very, very important for a mufti to be conversant with usul al-fiqh. Very, very important. And indeed, al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya, also legal maxims, they are very, very important. And its principles, their principles are rules. Also, objectives of Sharia, maqasid al-Sharia, because as Ibn al-Qayyim explained in Ilam al-Muwaqqi'in, Islam, or rather the Sharia of Allah, is based on wisdom, rational, and objectives. Even though sometimes one may not find it, even in the Quran or Sunnah, may not find the objectives or the rationale. The illah may not be there, explicitly. But there is nothing that is in the Quran or Sunnah in terms of ruling which has no any wisdom or rationale. Everything has rationale and wisdom because Allah is the all-wise. However, the abuse of maqasid al-Sharia is also not allowed.
Professor, can we summarize in 3 minutes, sir?
Okay, inshallah. The abuse of maqasid al-Sharia is not allowed in the issuance of fatwa. Then knowledge about the situation, custom, tradition of people, circumstances, emerging issues, and events. While considering all this, it is required of the Sharia board to make sure that they do not issue fatwa just on the basis of this. If issuing fatwa on the basis of any of this would actually violate an established, well-known rule or principle of the Sharia. And lastly, the person issuing fatwa or the Sharia board must have the ability to use the Sharia accepted methods of driving reasonable rulings on emerging issues. Quickly, I made reference to some sections of AWOFI Sharia Standard 29, especially Section 7, Subsection 1, Subsection 2, Subsection 4, and Section 8, Subsection 5, and Section 9, Subsections 1 and 4, on some of the additional requirement in terms of qualification and the process of issuing fatwa by the Sharia board. I also mentioned that there are some ethics that need to be observed in the course of issuing fatwa. The first ethic is diligence, that the issuer of fatwa should be slow and cautious in explaining the fatwa and avoiding over courage in making fatwa decision, because Al-Imam Malik was reported to have said that being hasty in issuing fatwa is a type of foolishness. It's a type of foolishness to be hasty in issuing fatwa. The second ethic is consistency. Sharia Advisory Board should avoid issuing different fatwas on the same subject and the same issue. Because if they do that, it will create confusion. And the management or members of board of directors will not know which one to use. And probably it may end up being abused by taking what they consider to be lighter or more easier or simpler, or what they consider to be in line with what they will give them, what will give them more profits. The third ethic is being focused, that Sharia Advisory Committee, when issuing fatwa, should avoid issuing fatwa when they are mentally involved in other things. They have to be focused, understand what they are talking about, understand the issues raised to them or brought to them, and look at all its dimensions and ramifications before going into the business of issuing fatwa. And the fourth ethic is confidentiality, that Sharia Advisory Board or fatwa issuers, wherever they are, should keep the secrets of the institution and its employees. There are some brothers who are really obsessed by this or with this issue of social media. They always want to make posts. They want to make posts. They post everything, including things that are really supposed to be kept in confidence. This is really not good. And sometimes you see people coming to say, someone come to ask me this, and I say this. And sometimes some of these are really unpalatable. They are not to be spoken in public, yet they come out to say it because probably they feel that is how to disseminate knowledge, or maybe, I don't know really. So it is not one of the ethics. It's really unethical for a fatwa issuer to not keep the secrets of the institution and its employees, as well as the application mechanisms which have been revealed to him in the fatwa process. Because any information that you will not be able to come across or you'll not be able to access, if not for the purpose of that fatwa, you are not supposed to disclose it. But if it is something that is already in the public domain, it has become public knowledge, then there is no problem. The last ethics I want to mention is devotion to Allah, that the issuer of fatwa should actually devote himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be sedate and calm, to be virtuous and pious, to be far away from suspicion, to be self-educating, and to be honest in what he does not know or what needs more review and assurance. It is not good for a fatwa issuer to assume that he knows everything and that at any point in time, anytime, anywhere, if he is asked, he'll just say, this is the ruling. There are instances whereby you have to say, we will actually review further or would conduct a research and so on and so forth. But to just say, this is the ruling without actually being cautious and without being diligent in the process of issuing fatwa is really dangerous. I will stop here, brothers and sisters, because I've even exceeded the time allocated for the presentation by about 30 minutes. But I must tell you that I have more to say, especially regarding the process of arriving at valid, or rather at an acceptable or appropriate fatwa. Whenever you are presented with an issue, there are procedures, there are processes which I try to explain. But since I'm going to share the slides, inshallah, most of the contents of the processes and the procedures are self-explanatory. Bismillah, people would read on their own and understand Bismillah. But one last thing I have to mention before I stop is that generally a fatwa should be value-oriented. It should be text-centered and text-oriented. It should actually be given in consideration of reality and context. It should be life-oriented based, and it should be expertise-based, where you are presented with an issue that requires the expertise or the knowledge of an expert in a particular field. You need to invite him. You need to consult him. If it's going to be at the expense of the bank, ask the bank or the financial institution to invite experts so you can discuss with them. If you don't understand, if you don't have a good conceptualization, and if you don't have a good conceptualization of the issue, you are not going to give an appropriate fatwa. Conceptualization or proper conceptualization and comprehension of the particular issue at hand is one of the key components of fatwa process, because al-hukmu ala shay'i far'un an tasawwuri. So giving fatwa about something or on something is actually an appendage or depends on your level of understanding of that issue. If you do not understand it, you have no proper conceptualization and comprehension of that issue, you won't be able to give a fatwa that will be appropriate, a correct fatwa. Your fatwa is most likely going to be incorrect because, as Ibn Amir al-Hajj said in his book At-Taqrir wa Tahdir, al-hukmu ala shay'i biduna tasawwurihi muhalun. Giving a correct fatwa, giving correct fatwa or ruling on something without or before having proper conceptualization and comprehension of it is completely impossible. I pray and hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to keep us safe, increase us in knowledge and understanding, and give us the wherewithal, the ability, and the courage to practice our knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to see the efforts that all of us collectively and individually we are making to promote Islamic finance, to advocate Islamic finance in Nigeria and beyond a success. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ease our affairs and crown our effort with success. I will stop here, not because I'm done, but I have to. وجزاكم الله خيرا وأحسن إليكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
آمين وأنتم جزاكم الله خيرا وأحسن الله إليكم وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. We actually would not want you to stop, even though because we have a kind of time restriction, because we have been enjoying the presentation, especially the tail end of the presentation where you have taken us through the techniques, requirements, ethics and obligations of a mufti, mustafti, and the requirements and steps of iftar. But we believe, inshallah, that when you share with us the slide, we would learn better from your documentation. So that is our Professor Ahmadu Bello from the Ahmadu Bello University, Professor of Accounting. He is well known and one of the brains behind the development, structuring, and those who make sure that the Islamic financial institutions in Nigeria go as expected. He has been working for more than 2 decades in the industry and have written different books, articles. Have been able to make different presentations as regards to the financial institutions. So we actually thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this opportunity to have it today. And we actually thank Allah for making the program very visible and achievable. Jazakumullah khairan for the Prof for bringing this thought nourishing lecture. Like we have said earlier, that we would be accepting solutions in terms of questions, observations, clarifications. Unfortunately, we may not have time to have this because the time has been spent. But before requesting for any other reactions from the audience, I have a question that was earlier shared here in our chat box, and I would want to read it to Prof. And I want that Prof answers that question in few seconds. Say like with this short timing, that we can have other reactions and contributions. While I'm still looking for the questions, I would open the floor for those who actually want to make clarification questions or related comments based on what we just heard from the Prof. I'm trying to find out the question that was sent earlier. I've not been able to get it. But if there's someone that would want to make kind of reactions in terms of questions, clarifications, or even maybe contribution in few minutes that we just have before we call it a day. I'm here to find the questions of the questionnaire, but I think he has been able to share it. So I'm going to read it out now. The question says that, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, Prof. Jaiz Bank has faced criticism regarding certain products, particularly the one that has to do with murabaha. So give your expertise in Islamic finance. Given your expertise in Islamic finance and your role on the bank's advisory board, could you evaluate the bank's adherence to Sharia guidelines and share your assessment of its compliance level? I'm very aware that Prof has mentioned things like related to this when he was giving his presentation. I just want to read it out. So if he has anything to add to these questions, we can hear. So while listening to Prof's reactions, I would only allow Brother Kabir Hussein Ruma for just 2 minutes to make his contribution after Prof has reacted to that question.
Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum. And thanks to the brother or sister that has sent the question. It will be difficult to respond to this question if I do not know the exact areas, of supposed Sharia violation of the Murabaha, products of Jaiz Bank or any other Islamic financial institution in Nigeria. Interestingly, I'm actually involved not only with Jaiz. Of course, for banks, yes, Jaiz only, but there are also Islamic funds that I'm involved with, and the issue of Muraba is also part of what we do. So if the brother would help us, even if it is through Dr. Habibullah later, to maybe tell us the specific areas he needs clarification, then inshallah, I would, if I have information readily available, I would share. Otherwise, I would have to go and check or find out. But one very important thing is that many people don't seem to understand the issues relating to Murabaha lil Amir Bishra. Many tend to think that, okay, what's the difference if I go to a conventional bank, Bank A, and say, okay, give me loan, 100,000 naira, whether they know what I'm going to use it for or they don't, they give me, and then the interest is like 25% per annum, so I pay. What's the difference between it and I going to Jaiz Bank and say, I need a vehicle, or maybe I need an APEP or something like that, and the cost is 500,000 naira, and they also add their margin of, let's say, 100,000 naira payable in 24 months. What's the difference? Is it not money they give me, or is it money that is not money? Is it not something that I'm paying back to them over and above what actually they have spent? The truth of the matter is that Muraba is a type of sale, but borrowing, on interest is borrowing. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala differentiated this in the Quran. وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْءَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. So you can see there are two different things. Another area of confusion is with regards to risk. That, okay, where is the risk? Because the rule in Sharia is al-gunmu bil-gurmi. That profits should be associated or accompanied with risk taking. So where is the risk in Muraba? In truth, there are a lot of risks. Even recently, we had a case whereby we directed, or rather we decide that a whole transaction should be cancelled at the peril of the bank. Why? Because there are certain violations, and they have to take that, so it means that they even lost, they suffer loss. So there is actually risk in Muraba, and not only in one bank or this bank. I have actually seen a lot of it. So there are so many things.
I'm going to try to find out.
Yes, so please find out and let's know so that so that we know
clarification on the question. I will get back to you, sir.
Okay, so that's good.
I have.
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay. Hello, sir.
I'm very sorry, sir. Actually, I was looking at.
Okay, sorry, please, sir. Can you just wait? I am going to allow Malam Kabir Hussein to make for just 1 minute, please. And while after him, I'm going to call others.
Okay, sir.
Is it still there, my friend? If it's not there, Malam Mudassir Adesanya, can you just make your brief, reaction?
Thank you so much, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Prof, for this wonderful presentation. I just wanted to ask a few questions, but just one for now. You talked about the delay of a Sharia scholar in terms of giving fatwa givers to be able to give the right fatwas. What about in terms of getting ahead of the curve? With the kind of world we are in right now, the technological world and everything, things are moving fast. I just thought that, is this also going to be in the duty of the Sharia scholars or the fatwa givers to go ahead of the curve in terms of research, in terms of knowing what might happen because of the kind of calamity we are facing with the technology itself, the advancement, and so on and so forth. I just want to know if it's also possible to look at it in that regard as well, to be able to differentiate or to mitigate some wrong doings to happen or that is about to happen. I'm just looking at it in different angles. So I would like for you to react to that and see what we can do.
It would react. Can we allow my brother Serajuddin Abdulaziz to make his own reaction? I want Prof to react generally to those reactions.
Yes, yes, I have questions. Assalamu alaikum.
Just in one. Salam.
Yes, my first question, I want to ask Prof, being a member of the Sharia compliance board of Jais, I want to ask him if it is CBN that made it mandatory that Jais banks to employ those who are not Muslim. That is my first question.
I'm going to make a kind of request that when we are asking questions, please don't let us make it a personalized question. So either by Jais or other banks, we can actually make a general questions, like for example, I fish in Nigeria, instead of making it a kind of personalized question. Is that correct?
I only know of Jais. I am not familiar with Lotus and other tags. I am not familiar with it. That's why I'm very particular about it.
I understand, sir. I understand.
Okay. My second question is, what is I want to be particular about this equally because I was former national president of MSS and I was part of the administration of Malam Muhyiddin Adoni, one-time national president of MSSN. At the time of Amir Azonogi, some money was invested in the creation of Jais Bank as share. I don't know what Jais Bank is doing to their shareholders. I don't know because I was the national president for 3 years and I was never invited. There was no correspondence between MSS and the bank.
My sister Khadija Nike in 1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute, sorry.
No, thanks so much, sir, for the video. My question is is a bit digression from topic. So just accept my digression short. So I want to ask, we are talking about we are talking about Mufti and how they give their fatwas and all that. Now, as Muslims that will go and request for fatwas from this sheikh and all that, from the muftis and all that. So I want to know, does it have anything to do with their Islamic ideology? Now, to make this a little bit clearer, I'm only using this as an example. Like you have a book on zakat written by I think Imam Al-Qurdawi, and some of us will kind of have a reservation to their kind of ideology when it comes to Islamic teaching and all that. So now my question now is, as
I think the the question is clear, and I am very sure Prof would address it appropriately because of our time. Because we are actually starting now, and we would Prof to address all those questions. Lastly, I'm going to call on Rufai Shitu for his question. I don't know that Prof can just react to all the questions summarily. You can ask. You can if you are on our group, Madam Khadija Nike, for your question. If it is not well answered, you can actually shut me up for a
Sorry, Dr. Habibullah, I've actually lost you. I didn't get what you said. After the sister,
Were you able to get some questions?
Yeah, the sister, yeah, I got her question.
You can just answer. I'm trying to relate others to you, sir.
Okay.
There was
thank you.
Sir. I think two of the questions about guys. Then one brother asks about was actually
yes, I've jotted them down. I've jotted them down.
You can just go on, sir.
Thank you very much.
Of the questions,
yeah, on the first question, I would say that it may not be possible for the Sharia Advisory Committee to go into research on something that has not happened. They may not have that luxury of time. But I think part of what the bank can do is to commission researches, and then the internal Sharia audits or Sharia compliance units can actually help with some researches. Plus, the corporates or whichever department is responsible for innovation, creativity, and the rest, they can be futuristic in their thinking and in the way they see markets or business. And then when they have this kind of ideas, they can now put it down and try to develop something in form of a product or service. They can then send to the Sharia Advisory Board for review. Other than that, I do not think it will be possible. But if it is possible for them to do, fine and good. But I don't think it is possible for them to go into those kind of research, all in the name of trying to mitigate or rather trying to catch up with the future. That may not actually be convenient for them. The second one is a question. Well, the second two questions are on JAIS. On the first one, this is a management issue, so it's not within the purview of our mandates as advisory committee of experts. That is regarding appointments, who should be appointed, who should be given job and who should not, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. Actually, it's beyond us, because all we know from the Islamic point of view is that in an Islamic bank or Islamic financial institution, both Muslims and non-Muslims can actually work there as employees based on whatever criteria, standard criteria, standard and the conditions of service and everything, plus the minimum requirement for entry and the rest of it. Both Muslims and non-Muslims can work. It is permissible from the perspective of Sharia. But how much or how many, at what point, this is really management issue, and it has not brought to our notice. So I'm not in a position to answer that. My Amir, Brother Surajuddin, you've disappeared for many months. I've not even seen you even when I come to Lagos. You asked question regarding the shares of MSSN. I am happy with this question. I mean, yeah, the shares that MSSN subscribed to in Jaiz Bank. I'm happy with this question. You know why? Because just about last year or so, an issue came up in Jaiz Bank regarding what the bank will do with unclaimed dividends, and even the shares that the owners have not come forward to actually identify themselves or to collect their share certificates and the rest. It's really a very big problem for Jaiz Bank as we speak now. Even though a decision was given to them that, okay, they should invest it on behalf of the unknown, unidentified shareholders, pending when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them to the bank and say, we are the ones, and collect their share certificate from the registrars, and then initiate the process of claiming their unpaid dividend. We ask them to, not to keep it idle, in line with the hadith that is contained in Sahih Muslim, that a man worked for someone, and in the course they had this agreement as to the amount to be paid, and he left. So when he left, the man decided to invest the money, and the day the owner came back or returned to him and said, give me my wage, the wage that I did not collect many years ago. He gave him everything, didn't even collect anything. Of course, in the case of the bank, we say they should do it on the basis of mudaraba, so that whatever profits they get, they will take their share and be keeping the share of the shareholder pending when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring him. So, Brother Surajuddin, my Amir, I think it's an opportunity that you ask this question. Please, in Lagos, go to the branch where the regional manager, lives, or where the regional manager stays. Please find out. I would have asked you to see Brother. I would have asked you to see someone, but I think he's not there now. So Mansour is there. So please go and meet anybody. Alaikum Assalam, Brother Abu Bakr is here, and I believe he has something.
I think we can take this up quickly, inshallah, with the current Secretary General, Yahya D. Muhammad. If Brother Sirajuddin can pass any evidence of the purchase of the shares to him, we'll follow up, and inshallah, we'll get the status of the shares of MSSN, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, because it's a big problem. It's a big problem on Jaiz right now. It is looking for a way to get rid, to give all those people, inshallah, their shares. Then the last question here is whether we can seek fatwa from people with deviant ideology. Actually, the resolution, IOFI resolution I mentioned regarding al-iftar wal-istiftar has actually done justice to that area, because it has a whole section titled those from whom fatwa should not be sought. So if you read the resolution of IOFI I mentioned, that is resolution number 153, item 2, sub-item 17, you would see where, when you go down, you will see where the issue of those from whom we should not seek fatwa was actually discussed. This is because sometimes, fatwa is an amana. So if you seek fatwa from someone who actually is either not qualified or is qualified but has some kind of deviant ideologies, he or she may end up misleading you. And instead of being guided to the right path, you may end up being misled. So that is why it is important, because knowledge is amana. Hadith, or rather seeking fatwa, is an amana. It is said that al-isnadu min ad-dini walau al-isnadu laqala man sha'a ma sha'a. That isnad, that is chain, the chain through which you get knowledge, you get information, is part of the deen itself, is part of the religion. Because without it, anybody can just come out and say anything he wishes. So it is important that we know the person that we are supposed to, seek knowledge from. And one of the Salaf is saying that this knowledge, or this religion, or this knowledge, this hadith, referring to knowledge generally, is an amana. And therefore we should know where to get it from. We should know where to get it. Of course, if someone says something that is correct and is in line with the Sharia, we will not say that his background will prevent us from using what he said or accepting what he said. No. The golden rule is the Prophet ﷺ himself confirmed the truth in what Shaitan said. But although he described him as a blatant liar, he still said what he said was the truth. Sadaqaka wa huwa kadhubun. So the source does not matter, provided it is genuine. But why scholars are afraid of allowing people to just go anywhere and seek fatwa is because they may not know. They don't have the knowledge of, differentiating between what is right and what is wrong, what is correct and what is not correct. And that is why they need to be very careful in terms of the people from whom they gain knowledge or fatwa. But if someone says something and they know it to be truth, or it is confirmed by a trustworthy person, then definitely they have no reason not to use that just because the person is a deviant person or he has one kind of akida. No. وَلَا يُطَاعُ عَالِمٌ فِي بَاطِلٍ وَالْحَقُّ مَقْبُولٌ وَلَوْ مِنْ جَاهِلٍ فَانْظُرْ لِذَاتِ الْقَوْلِ لَا لِلْقَائِلِ. That's the golden rule. Wallahu a'lam.
for this last question answer. And I would want to actually make a kind of annotation because the questionnaire answer actually mentioned a name of a particular scholar. I'm going to make a kind of advice here that so far as we would only take knowledge from the scholars, we actually need scholars also to tell us that a particular scholar is a alim. So mentioning someone in the scholar like Al-Qadai, for example, and making him an example of the scholar that we cannot take knowledge from is not something that we should actually be debating here. Al-Qadai is a scholar, especially when it comes to finance and Islamic finance. He's a scholar. So if a scholar tells you that because someone has a mistake in a particular field of knowledge, then we cannot benefit anything from him, then no one will be safe from this. So there's no how in our modern world today, and we would say we wouldn't be benefiting knowledge from the likes of those who we have mentioned in your question. I also go with the answers of Sheikh. I just needed to make that clarification that even the example you made is actually not okay by normal standard of who is a scholar or not a scholar. So lastly, inshallah, we are actually behind.
Sorry, Dr. Habib. I didn't even hear that part of mentioning the name of a particular scholar.
She mentioned
Qardawi?
Yes, she mentioned.
Oh, okay. I didn't even hear it. I would advise the sister to actually distance herself from those unnecessary arguments and debates, scholarly debates between scholars as to what is the status of Al-Qardawi. No doubt by all standards and by even the confirmation of scholars like Sheikh Al-Albani, Sheikh Al-Uthaymeen, Sheikh bin Baz, Qardawi is an international scholar. But he has his errors and mistakes, and no one is free from that. There is nobody apart from the Prophet ﷺ that is free from errors. So I think it is important that we understand this, and especially in matters relating to, fiqh, usul, qawaid, and Muslim civilization. This is something that you cannot take away from Qardawi, no matter what. You cannot take it away. But he has his errors, whether in Aqidah or in Manhaj, and some of us acknowledge that. We even actually warn against some of the errors, but it will never, deter us from benefiting from his, fountain of knowledge. If, for example, you take the book of Zakah, where would you find in this world a book that is as comprehensive as his PhD thesis, which was later published as Fiqh al-Zakah in 2 volumes and translated into English by our own Professor Mudhir Kahf? You cannot find, I am not aware of any book on Zakah that is as comprehensive as his own book. But he has errors, and we all have our own errors. Even the scholars that are accusing him, they have their own errors. I think if we go by that, we will not definitely benefit from the fountain of knowledge of many scholars. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to be our guide.
And we are actually ending the session today. This is the first time we are going to have this long discussion, and we actually thank Allah for having this, and we appreciate the time being shared by Prof and other participants. For those who would want to make a kind of contribution that were not allowed, we still have our group opened, and we are formally inviting Prof to join us in our group. So when such issues are raised, he join those that are there to make a kind of clarifications and suggestions in Islamic financial issues. So, Jazakumullah khairan, and we will be having a next session as in a few time, inshallah. I'm not going to make a kind of I'm not going to make a kind of promise, but inshallah soon we'll be having a next session as relates to enlightenment on Islamic financial institutions. Jazakumullah khairan wa barakallahu fikum. Once again, Prof, Jazakumullah khairan wa barakallahu fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.